How you been? Welcome to our class for Practical Research 2. So before we start, if you haven't subscribed to my YouTube channel, you can check out my YouTube channel, Reynaldo Casero Collado Jr. And please subscribe and hit the bell button. So for today, we are going to have the very first lesson for Practical Research 2. So Practical Research 2 is the second research subject for senior high school students. So this research is more of quantitative research. So for today, we are going to have the following learning competencies. After this, you should be able to describe the characteristics, strengths, weaknesses, as well as the kinds of quantitative research. By the way, this slide is brought to you by yours truly, as well as one of my colleagues, which was cited on the slide. Alright, so let's start. So, first and foremost, we have to know what is quantitative research. For us to know that, we have here two definitions cited by Creswell and Dean. According to Creswell, quantitative research is the process of collecting, analyzing, interpreting, and writing the results of a study. Well, if you can try to look into the keywords here, we have collecting, analyzing, interpreting, and writing results of the study. So if you are going to take a look back at qualitative research, you might as well have the same definition for quantitative research. But we have here a difference of analyzing and interpreting. So let us try to focus on the difference between the two. So when you talk about quantitative research, this comes from the root word quantity. So for quantity, quantity means number. While for qualitative research, that is quality. So quality means you can just describe it. So in other words, quantitative research deals more with numbers than qualities. So compared to qualitative research, it has more of computations. That is why we have the words analyzing and interpreting. And since we are going to talk about analyzing and interpreting, we might as well recall the definition of statistics. So statistics is just the collection, organization, presentation, analysis, and interpretation of data. So we have three words there that are almost similar from the definition according to Creswell of quantitative research. Therefore, statistics is key in having quantitative research. Later on, as we go through different lessons, we are going to know what statistical tools are we going to use in order for us to have better, or if not best, quantitative research. Now, let's try to look into the definition of Yin, 2014. According to Yin, quantitative research deals with logical problems, not with logistical problems. While research design influences our way of dealing with the research problem, our research method directs us about dealing with treatment of data, whether to use a survey questionnaire, interview, observation, or tests. So, as you can see here, there are different research methods as well as research instruments that are cited. So we have here questionnaire, interviews, observations, or tests. But then again, quantitative research offers a design which values exactness of the results. So how will you be able to express the exactness of the result? So when you talk about exactness, then you might as well think of numerical data. Because no matter where we go, numbers do not lie. Which means to say that numerical data is always, if not exact. Questions so far? You can leave your questions in the comment box. Alright. Now, we have in here a table showing the strengths and weaknesses of the quantitative research. This is according to Shuttleworth 2008. So according to him, one of the strengths of quantitative research is it is an excellent way of finalizing results and proving or disproving hypotheses. So as you all know, quantitative research is somewhat very related to hypothesis testing. So in hypothesis testing, you have to have a hypothesis which will be tested into a certain level of significance. Usually, that is what you call the alpha level of significance. And is therefore, quantitative research is a great way for us to do hypothesis testing. Therefore, having a proof or a proof that the problem exists for something or not. Alright. How about its weakness? It can be difficult and expensive and require a lot of time to perform. Since you will be able to do some proving or disproving of a certain hypothesis, it might take you some time. It's because you have to gather data. And remember, since this is quantitative research, you will be dealing more with accuracy. And accuracy means more samples. Accuracy means more audience. So if you want more audience, then you might as well have to have a lot of time for you to spend. And if you need a lot of time, then that comes with money. Because according to a certain person, time is money. Therefore, it is expensive and at the same time difficult to do. Why is it difficult to do? It's because there are lots of tasks for you to be able to have the certain data that you wanted to have. Alright, let's hop on to the second strength and weakness. The hypothesis is given statistical analysis of the results so that a comprehensive answer is reached and the results can be legitimately discussed and published. So since hypothesis testing is under statistical analysis, this means to say that your results will be legitimate enough and therefore it is going to be published, and if it's published, it can be discussed among colleagues who are really into research. It's because you have numerical data for them to interpret as well. On the other hand, what is its weakness? Its weakness require extensive statistical analysis since you don't want um, since you don't want something or since you don't want a result that is not so very good, then you should spend more time doing statistical analysis. So it might be very difficult. And at the same time, not all researchers are statisticians. You might need to seek help of a statistician. Next, strength and weakness. Quantitative experiments are useful for testing results gained by a series of qualitative experiments leading to final answer and narrowing down possible directions to follow up research to date. Well, if you try to go back qualitative experiments, this means that you are just going to describe something using just simple statistical tools compared to quantitative research, which uses very difficult at times, very complicated statistical analysis. So if you try to take something, let's say you have a certain research problem and you had it researched using qualitative method. Right now, you don't have numerical data. So for you to be able to prove or disprove your results for qualitative research for that particular problem, you have to have a quantitative research for it to provide numerical data which will prove or disprove your claim from your qualitative research. On the negative note, it tends to generate only proved or unproven results with very little room for gray areas and uncertainty, where human nature is a lot more complex than just a simple yes or no response. So what does this mean? This means to say that since you are more into numerical analysis, you tend to somewhat neglect the human error So you are actually, in statistical analysis, you are actually giving a margin of error. But can I ask you something? Is that margin of error enough for you to claim that your results are really good or are really excellent? Or are your results really true based on your margin of error? So in that case, that can be one of the downsides of quantitative research. Okay, now let us try to move on the kinds of quantitative research. So this is again based from Creswell 2012. So according to Creswell 2012, there are four kinds of quantitative research. So these are experimental research, quasi-experimental research, correlational research, and descriptive research. Now, where do they differ? So as you can see in the figure, experimental and quasi-experimental research are connected to intervention, while the other two, correlational and descriptive, are connected to non-intervention. What does this mean? This means that experimental and quasi-experimental research tend to require interventions after the results of the study. While for correlational and descriptive, they are more of non-intervention requirement. What does that mean? So it means to say that you can just state your results and that's it. For correlational and descriptive. Correlational means you have to relate one particular variable with another variable. That's correlational. Descriptive is just something about answering all the questions using numerical data. So these are the 5 W's and H questions. Now for experimental, you have to test your hypothesis. That is also the same with class experimental. And mostly, it needs to have intervention for you to be able to do experimental and at the same time quasi-experimental. So we are going to discuss more of this in the next lessons that we are going to have. Right now, we are just going to state the kinds of quantitative research. Alright, now this one is according to Grand Canyon University Center for Innovation in Research and Teaching, and this was published 2017. So the kinds of research are specified here. So first, these are two kinds, survey or descriptive and correlational. So the key focus for descriptive is that it is only observational. So as I told you earlier, it just answers the 5 W's and H questions because it's just going to describe what is. Is there an intervention needed? No. Walang kailangan doon. Example, a description of teenagers' attitudes towards smoking. So you are just going to look into the attitude of the teenagers towards smoking. It doesn't necessarily mean that you have to correlate the attitude with the smoking or you have to correlate something for the teenagers to tend to smoke. Okay? Then for correlational, this focuses on relationships among variables, whether variables are independent or dependent variables. But take note, in correlational studies or correlational research, variables are not controlled. We will know why and when are we going to control our variables. We will have a different kind of research for that one. Again, this does not require intervention. And here is an example, a study of relationship between IQ and family's financial status. So in this particular topic, you are just going to relate the IQ and the financial status of an individual. So you are not going to control anything. You are not going to control the financial status. You are not going to change the IQ. So you cannot do that. Therefore, this is just a correlational study because you are just going to find out what is the connection between the two variables that I have stated. Next. Okay, wait for for a while. Oh, okay. Oh, let's have the last slide. Alright. So, we now have the third kind, which is the causal comparative, or otherwise known as the quasi-experimental design, or quasi-experimental research. So, the key focus for this type of design is it tests for causality with suboptional variable control, independent variable not manipulated. So this is where we talk about independent and dependent variables. So in causal comparative, you are not going to manipulate the independent variable. Whereas in the experimental, you are going to manipulate the independent variable. These two require intervention, and this intervention must be applied. Whereas the previous two that we have discussed do not require intervention. So we have here the following examples. For quasi-experimental, a study of the effect of after-school physical activity program on childhood obesity rates. Alright, so you can ask a question now. It's because it's somewhat similar to the example that we had for correlational research. This one is different. You know why? It's because in the previous example that we had, we are just going to know the degree of relationship between two variables. Now for this one, it's the degree of effect. Cause and effect. That's why it's called causal comparative. Therefore, if you want to find the degree of an effect, your study or your kind of study is causal comparative. Is that clear now? And then for experimental, it's very simple. It's like doing a science experiment, so you have to alter something. You have to alter the independent variable. So we have here the example. A study of the effects of the new diet treatment plan on insulin levels on diabetics. Again, sir, we have the word effects. Why is it not causal comparative? It's very simple. What do we need to test? It's a new diet treatment plan. Therefore, it doesn't have any existence prior to your study. It is a new plan. So you are going to test out whether it is something that is effective or something that is defective. Therefore, since you are going to test, then it is experimental. Alright, I hope everything is clear for our objectives for today. If you wanted to learn more about this, you can visit these references that I have posted here on the slides. And if you have more questions, you can just comment down below or private message my messenger accounts and Facebook accounts. That's it for today. See you next time.